Welcome back, everybody. This is going to be an update video on the two Alaska State Troopers that beat up an innocent man. They put him in the hospital and gave him over 300 stitches. Miller and Woodruff. This is going to be the full story of what these troopers did. These are going to be some clips from the news outlets here in Alaska. And there's also going to be a small video of a gentleman named Robert Bodell, which is relevant because he had the same thing happen to him. Do me a favor, like, share, subscribe, leave a comment down below, and let's get into it.
Two Alaska State Troopers are charged with misdemeanor assault following a violent interaction with a man in Kenai. 49-year-old Joseph Miller and 42-year-old Jason Woodruff are both charged with fourth-degree assault. On May 24th, the troopers, along with the Kenai Police Department, confronted 38-year-old Ben Ticka in the back of his parked vehicle, believing he had a warrant out for his arrest. Ticka denied the warrant, and a press release says Miller sprayed pepper spray into the vehicle after breaking a rear window when Ticka refused to exit. According to the release from the Department of Public Safety, when Ticka continued to defy orders outside the vehicle, Miller used his boot to push Ticka's head into the ground, which was then covered in broken glass. A taser was also allegedly used multiple times while handcuffing Ticka. A canine was allegedly ordered to bite him, and the release says these orders continued after he appeared to begin complying. Ticka was taken to a hospital for treatment, and it was eventually determined that he was not who they were looking for.
What do you guys think? Using his boot to stomp his head? Let me know in the comments.
Joining us on this Thursday, new at noon, the State Public Safety Commissioner says two Alaska State Troopers have been charged with assaulting a man who should have never been arrested. Commissioner James Cockrell says 49-year-old Sergeant Joseph Miller and 42-year-old Trooper Jason Woodruff assaulted a man they were attempting to take into custody at Dobbinspec Park in Kenai back in May, but prosecutors say he was not the suspect and say they heard him when they forced him to get out of his vehicle, deployed pepper spray, a taser, and a dog. Both officers are charged with fourth-degree assault. Cockrell said after he reviewed body-worn camera footage from the incident, he called for a criminal investigation and handed it over to the ABI.
Well, last night we brought you a story about a Soldotna man who says he was sitting in the passenger seat of a stranded SUV on the side of the Sterling Highway waiting for his friends to return with some gas when he was confronted by a state trooper. But as investigative reporter Mike Mason tells us, troopers say that's only part of the story, one that has had many twists and turns.
In January 2021, 71-year-old Bob Bodell was arrested and released, awaiting trial on charges of disorderly conduct and the assault of a state trooper. But Bodell believes he is the victim of a rookie trooper.
This wasn't all they did to me.
71-year-old Bob Bodell was maced, tased twice, and struck in the head and face by Trooper Brian Glenn, who had been on the force for about 6 months. But there is no video of the incident in question.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's Robert Bodell. Do you guys see a pattern here? I see a pattern. It's just fortunate for us that now we have body cams. Unfortunate for law enforcement all over the United States. I think it's a little convenient that they didn't have a dash cam in that vehicle. I'll put a link to Robert Bodell's YouTube in the pinned comments and the description down below. Plus a video that I did on Robert Bodell and several other people that the Alaska State Troopers have done this to. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this. Is this disgusting or what? Okay, now here's the commissioner for the Alaska State Troopers in Alaska. This is crazy. Now I gotta apologize for the video in this next clip. This is what happens when you give a government official a camera.
Hello everyone, my name is Austin McDaniel. I'm the Communications Director for the Alaska Department of Public Safety. This morning we're holding a press conference. I'm gonna turn things over to Commissioner James Cockrell. Good morning.
As Austin said, I'm James Cockrell. I'm current director or commissioner of the Alaska Department of Public Safety. I've been in this position for just over 3.5 years, and with the department approximately 33 years. Today, I'm announcing that 2 Alaska State Troopers have been charged with assault charges for actions they took while working as Alaska State Troopers on the Kenai Peninsula. The first person involved in this was 49-year-old Sergeant Joseph Miller, a 14-year employee of the Alaska State Troopers that most recently served as a night shift supervisor in Soldotna. He has been charged with assault in the 4th degree. 42-year-old Joseph Woodruff, a 16-year-old employee of the Alaska State Troopers, the most recently worked as a Kenai officer, has been charged with assault in the 4th degree. He's also assigned to the Soldotna Alaska State Trooper post. These charges stem from a May 24th incident that occurred on the Kenai Peninsula, specifically Kenai. 3 Alaska State Troopers responding to reports that a vehicle was parked in public right-of-way and was registered to an adult male with an active misdemeanor warrant. Troopers and Kenai police officers attempted to contact the occupant in the vehicle. However, he remained hidden in the rear of the vehicle for several minutes and did not respond to troopers. Troopers eventually spotted the adult male in the back of the vehicle and ordered him to exit the vehicle as he had a warrant for his arrest. The adult male disputed the fact that he had an active warrant and refused to exit the vehicle. Sergeant Miller then broke out the rear window and dispersed pepper spray on the person in the back vehicle to include due to the male's reluctance to come out of his vehicle. The adult male began to exit the vehicle while troopers attempted to handcuff the male. Sergeant Miller had placed his foot on top of the adult male's head, pushing it into the ground, covered in broken glass caused by us breaking out the person's vehicle window. And because of that, the individual's head or face started bleeding. Sergeant Miller also deployed his taser multiple times during the attempt to handcuff him. Trooper Woodruff then deployed his canine on the adult male as he was beginning to comply with commands from officers. The canine continued to bite the adult male at Woodruff's command. The man was ultimately placed in handcuffs to provide first aid by 2 other troopers until EMS arrived and took him to the area hospital, which is in Soldotna, for further treatment. Troopers then learned that the adult male did not have an active warrant and was not the person that we were actually looking for. During a standard review of use of force and canine application, which we do in all cases, that was conducted by the department's canine coordinator, it was determined that there may have been multiple violations of policy and was brought to the attention of department leadership and myself. After reviewing the body-worn camera, I ordered a criminal investigation immediately and handed that over to the Alaska Bureau of Investigations and took both troopers out of service until the criminal investigation was completed by ABI. Once the Alaska Bureau of Investigation completed their criminal investigation, they referred it to the Office of Special Prosecutions to determine if troopers should face criminal charges. Yesterday, the Office of Special Prosecutions filed criminal complaints in the Kenai District Court against both officers. The Alaska State Troopers hold ourselves to extremely high standards of conduct and accountability. Any allegation of criminal conduct by an Alaska State Trooper is aggressively investigated so that we can hold our employees accountable for their actions, just as we would any person committing a crime in the state of Alaska. I'll have to say personally, when I reviewed this video, I was totally sickened by what I saw. 2 Alaska State Troopers that represent this uniform, represents this state, conducted themselves in this way. Because of their actions, there was significant injuries to the person that went to the hospital that was in that vehicle. And I've been with this department 33 years, and I've never seen any action like this before by an Alaska State Trooper. And it's hard for me to equate how this has affected me and other troopers that wear this uniform. Let me be clear, the action of these two individuals is not acceptable to me, not in the line of our training and our policy, and I know it's not acceptable to Alaskans that we serve. While this is an unfortunate day for the Alaska State Troopers, I hope Alaskans will continue to place their trust in the hundreds of troopers that honorably serve Alaskans every day, ensuring public safety across this great state. With that said, I'm willing to take any questions.
We'll start here in the room. Johnson?
Yeah. Are we aware of whether or not Ben Tika, the man assaulted, has filed any charges against the department? And are you anticipating releasing any body camera footage at any point in the future?
On your first question, we're not aware of any charges or any civil suits that have been filed by Mr. Tika. Secondly, on the body-worn cameras or digital evidence, certainly in consulting law, we will reserve that till the Department of Law determines that it's fair and equitable that we release the digital evidence. Because what we don't want to do is taint the potential upcoming trials. And I'll let Deputy Attorney General Skidmore follow up on that.
Good afternoon. I'm John Skidmore, the Deputy Attorney General for the Criminal Division for the State of Alaska Department of Law. We held a press conference a couple of weeks ago when we were actually talking about officer-involved shootings. We were talking about body-worn camera footage at that time as well. I will reiterate what I said then. When there is body-worn camera footage, that is evidence in a criminal investigation. We do not release evidence in criminal investigations for the risk that can interfere with a citizen's constitutional rights when charges are brought. This is an example of where charges have been brought. Any evidence from this case will be looked at in a court of law. The jury will be able to evaluate it. We will not now, in this case, nor in any other case, ever try the case in the media. We have to protect the constitutional rights of those individuals that are charged. And so, to answer your question, will it ever be available? Yes, it will be. Only after the conclusion of this criminal case is done will the evidence then be available for the public to view, if not already having been viewed in the trial itself.
Wesley, last public meeting.
Yeah, actually I had a question for Mr. Skidmore. I'm curious, the assault 4 charge is a misdemeanor, and I'm just curious why it was a misdemeanor assault charge and not a felony assault charge. If you can maybe determine why it didn't reach that level.
In the state of Alaska, our laws for assault are based on degrees, and the degrees are related to the elements of the crime. That is, what are the things that we have to prove that are the difference between the felony and the misdemeanor. To get to a felony, there are one of two types of elements that are needed, either the use of a dangerous instrument or serious physical injury. Both of those terms, those phrases, are defined in law, and we have to go and look at those definitions to determine whether or not there was a dangerous instrument utilized. We don't believe that in this particular instance there was a dangerous instrument utilized, or that there was serious physical injury. And while I acknowledge that the victim in this case did have to go to the hospital, it is not unheard of where individuals have to seek medical treatment, but the injuries still do not rise to the level of serious physical injury. The definition of serious physical injury found in our statutes is that it has to be a physical injury that is capable of causing death or serious and protracted disfigurement, or the loss or impairment of the use of a body, organ, or member for some extended period of time. And while these injuries did indeed require medical attention, we have not found that there is sufficient evidence to say that it would have met that higher level. And so we do have some assault 4 cases that look very serious. The injuries in it are the sorts of things that concern people. They're not pleasant to look at. And those are cases that I would say end up having more serious sentencing that's imposed at the end of it. So it's not a typical assault 4 where there might be something less, but it ends up being a more significant assault 4, assault in the 4th degree, which is a misdemeanor. So there's a difference there. I understand the question, but that's really the answer is we have to look at those elements. That's what controls our ability to decide whether it should be pursued as a felony or not.
Tess Williams, Anchorage Daily News.
So these officers have not been arrested on these charges. They were instead summoned to appear before court. The man who was initially intended to be arrested was facing the exact same misdemeanor charge, a Class A misdemeanor. Can you explain the difference in why these officers are being summoned rather than arrested? And is there concern that that could imply special treatment of these officers?
The incident in question that occurred out in the field when officers are on scene and they are witnessing what they think are crimes, it's very common or typical for law enforcement to take somebody into custody at that time. To arrest somebody for a misdemeanor, it requires that the misdemeanor have occurred in the officer's presence. In this situation, there is not an officer on scene that investigated where the misdemeanor has occurred in their presence, but rather there's some period of time that has elapsed since then. We look at that and we evaluate whether or not to file charges, and when charges are filed, we then have to decide whether or not we have to execute an arrest warrant. Always within law enforcement, and from our perspective in the Department of Law, the questions we ask ourselves are whether or not the person is a danger to the community at large. In this instance, while the conduct that the officers engaged in, obviously we believe is criminal, which is why we filed criminal charges, there is not a reason that we have concern or a belief that these officers pose an ongoing danger to other people. It's not as though they have a history of assaultive behavior and we think they're going to go out and just assault people randomly in the public. That's when it would be appropriate to execute some sort of arrest warrant or to have applied for one in that nature. In terms of the idea of different conduct, I can tell you that every single day we actually execute summons and bring people in for all types of misdemeanor charges. So I don't actually think that there's a difference in that. The difference is really about the presence of the investigating officers witnessing the conduct itself initially. I would also comment that the initial charges that were brought against Mr. Tika have been dismissed.
Jeff Lanfield, last claimant.
If the troopers say they want the footage released, will you release the footage then?
No.
If you want to protect them, but if they say they want it released, wouldn't that be?
No, our obligation is to ensure that the jury pool is not tainted. It's not about what the other person wants. It's not about what we want. It's about ensuring that a jury pool is not tainted. When you look at evidence, the evidence has to be evaluated in an adversarial system that is controlled by the rules of evidence, and that's something that the judge decides. So determining what evidence is appropriate to be submitted to that jury is something that the court has to decide, and we're not going to do this through the media.
We'll go on the phone. Ashlyn O'Hara, KDLL.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
One, are the two officers that are still employed with the state, and also does DPS plan to review previous cases involving use of force by these troopers, given the discrepancies and omissions OSP found while investigating?
This is James Cockrell, Commissioner of the Department of Public Safety. On question number one, could you repeat that for me real quick, please?
Are the two troopers still employed with the state?
Technically they are. They're no longer, they're essentially put in administrative leave, and we really can't get into the long-term discussions on because of policy protections, but they are not on the road, and they are not, they don't have their badges or guns or anything like that.
What was your second question?
Quick follow-up, is that paid administrative leave?
Currently they're on administrative leave, and I can't answer that question because I'm not quite sure.
James Brooks, Alaska Beacon.
Thank you. The question that I had is one of context. This is, in my recollection, fairly unusual. I haven't seen charges brought as a result of an officer's work during an arrest. Is this a unique case, or is there any prior precedent for it?
I know I'll probably let Deputy Attorney General Skidmore talk. I will say that I've been with this department 33 years. My dad was a former Alaska State Trooper. I can't recall any other incidents, to my knowledge, that we've had an arrest like this with two troopers using excessive force when they're detaining a person.
So I can tell you that I've worked for the Department of Law for the last 25 years. And within that time, we have filed charges against a Bethel police officer for excessive use of force in an arrest that was made in the community of Bethel. We have filed assault charges against an APD officer for excessive use of force in a arrest or a contact that officer had engaged in. But I am unaware of any prior cases that were filed against an Alaska State Trooper for assault based on excessive use of force when making an arrest.
And could I follow up just briefly with a question that was related to a prior one? Could you please walk me through how this came to your attention, Commissioner? I don't think I quite followed how it got from incident to your desk.
Well, basically, like I say, all use of force that troopers apply during the course of their business are reviewed by command staff, and specifically any canine deployments that we utilize. We have a canine commander that reviews all use of deployment of canines to ensure that we're within department policies. That commander looked at the body-worn cameras on the deployment of the canine that was involved in this incident, felt that there was serious concerns about how they deployed the canine. That went to my leadership team, which would include the colonels and majors of the Alaska State Troopers. They brought it to my attention. I reviewed, like I said earlier, I reviewed the body-worn camera of the whole incident, including what Kenai had and what we had, and I felt that it needed to go to a higher level than just an administrative investigation. It needed to go to a criminal investigation, because I've never seen actions like that before deployed by an Alaska State Trooper in over 30 years.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Patrick Gilchrist, KTVF. Nick Sorrell, KSRM.
Yes, I just have a quick question. Have there been any prior complaints or questions about excessive force against either of those troopers?
This is James Cockrell again. To my understanding, none that's come to my level or command level, so I would say no.
Okay, and then just one quick follow-up question. I'm assuming one of those two was the handler for the K-9 trooper?
Yes, we had, the handler was Trooper Woodruff.
Okay, thank you, that was all.
You're welcome.
Are there any other reporters on the phone line that have a question that I have not called on yet? Come back in the room. Any questions?
Yeah, I had a couple of operating procedure questions. So Trooper Woodruff, according to charges, wasn't wearing a body camera during this incident. Is that, I'm under the understanding that troopers are supposed to always have them on. Is there a penalty for not having it on?
Well, my understanding under Trooper Woodruff, why he wasn't wearing it is because it ran out of batteries. He was trying to, and he left he was uploading ran out of batteries, was uploading video, and he didn't have, when they got the call, he didn't have it with him.
And then is it a standard practice to get the ID of a person who's being served a warrant? It strikes me that, you know, had they asked for ID from Mr. Zika, they would have known that he wasn't the person they were looking for.
That's a good question. Essentially, I would say they should have asked who was actually in the car. They assumed it was Garrett, and it wasn't Garrett, it was Ben. There should have been some additional questions asked before we broke the window and drug him out of his car, had him come out of his car.
And I just have one follow-up to Ashlyn's second question she asked before. Is there any intent to sort of look at past cases where they had used force in light of, them amending or omitting things from their report when they had initially filed? Is there going to be an effort from the department to look back at prior cases to see if, maybe there were other omissions in prior reports?
To my knowledge, we are reviewing a couple of cases that they were involved in. So I guess the answer is yes. I think.
So the dog involved in this arrest at several points did not obey commands, including fighting the trooper and not stopping by when he was commanded to stop. Is that dog still in service?
Currently, the dog is not in service.
Jeff? I'm going to address this, but why was the guy in his car, and he was hiding? Was he hiding out of fear? Was he evading the police? Why was he hiding?
To the best of my knowledge, I really don't know, but he wasn't, to my knowledge, he was not evading us or the Kenai Police Department.
How is AST addressing this internally?
What's
How
that?
is AST addressing this internally with officers?
I think you're going to have to give me a little bit more than that, specifically.
How are you guys discussing this with your officers, and what kind of conversations are coming out of that?
Certainly, we're trying to keep our troopers informed of the ongoing, I'll call it, investigation now in criminal charges. We're looking at policy issues to see if there's things that we need to change in-house to ensure this doesn't happen again. We've talked about body-worn cameras. We're ensuring that our troopers are wearing body-worn cameras like they should be. There are occasions when they either fall off or they go, but anyway, we're addressing those issues. This is any time that we have something like this in an agency that's, I knew both the troopers involved. I've been stationed on the Kenai Peninsula. So certainly it hits home. And I know that the Alaska troopers are very resilient, and I know that our performance and how we actually treat people day to day will eventually garner the trust of the people that we serve. The Alaska State Troopers do a remarkable job under some very, very difficult situations around this state, from logistics getting to our villages to policing urban areas and rural areas. And this is not what the Alaska State Troopers stand for, certainly not what I stand for. And as long as I'm commissioner, we're not going to allow this type of activity or what I consider gross misconduct by our troopers. The troopers mean a lot to this state. We are the only state law enforcement, and like you say, this is painful not only for us, but it's painful for our troopers that have to deal with it. And certainly, I'm sure they'll get some feedback from the public as they're out doing their duties. And anyway, I'm proud of the troopers. I will always be proud of the troopers. Troopers stand for a lot. This uniform signifies a lot in this state, a lot of history, a lot of good history, and a lot of good criminal investigations.
Was the body camera footage an integral part of bringing charges in this case?
I can't answer that. I do know it was certainly a big part in what brought it to my attention to where I felt it was strong enough that this needed to be a criminal investigation. Per policy, I'm the only person in this department that can ask for a criminal investigation against one of our own people. And I felt it serious enough based on what I saw in the body-worn camera and some documents that what we did was outrageous and it had to be addressed. And we had to get the Alaska Bureau of Investigations, which I have total confidence in their ability to investigate crimes in this state. Directed them to do the investigation. They did a very professional investigation under some really difficult situations. We essentially handed that off to law for determination. I know that law's has had it for a while to ensure that everybody's rights, and John can probably go more into their decision making, but I certainly support the decisions of the Department of Law and the input that they've had during our investigation in this. This is not a good thing for the Alaska State Troopers, but we are resilient. We will bounce back, and we'll do what we are supposed to do, is keep people safe in this state, regardless of what zip code you live in.
Has the department talked with the victim in this case, and what have those conversations been like?
To my knowledge, I know that our ABI investigators certainly talked to the folks. I have not reached out and talked to them. I don't know at what level we have talked to them, but I know that we've had conversations with them.
Anybody else on the phone line have any additional questions?
As usual, guys, all the information in this video will be in the description and the pinned comment down below. Do me a favor, like, share, subscribe, leave a comment down below, and I will see you guys on the next one. Later.